Yes.
And 3, 2, 1.
Hey team, Torrey Larsen here with another edition of Synergy Connects. I'm extremely excited to finally get these two on TV and to be able to bring it out to you. It's taken me well over, I'd say, 3 years. Today we have with us Tim Larsen, who runs everything admin for us. He's an EVP of the company, and Tyler Larsen, who is our CFO. Well, guys, when I told you to wear, I was going to wear a Navy suit and jeans, it didn't mean you had to follow suit. So
I went with the blue instead of the white.
yeah, great choice. So what we usually do is talk a little bit about what we do within the company, but in addition to that, talk a little bit about our backstories, so people get to know you personally. And just so you know, the fact checker is present. So,
We're not
Mom?
putting in any kind of old pictures or anything. You're not,
no, we promise not to do any B-roll like
'cause
that.
I do have some on you.
Yeah.
Let's just remember that.
Well, let's talk a little bit about kind of your backstories growing up. Obviously, we all grew up together in Wheaton, Illinois, just outside Chicago. And I'll start with you, Tim. Tell me a little bit about some of your interests growing up, because the fact that you ended up as a CPA today is still a shock to me, given your upbringing.
Well, it's a shock to pretty much everybody I knew growing up, but yeah, it's funny. We always joke around that, like in our youth, especially during the summers, you're always out playing different sports, and it was always pickup games everywhere. And we always joke that I would always remember eating breakfast, leaving the house, and then I was home for dinner at dark, and that was it. And our parents never knew where we were, but it was just a different time.
Yeah,
So true.
You could actually, send your kids out. They were safe.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember bike riding all the time, hanging out with my friends, and never felt like there was any element of danger.
Yeah.
And then when we have our own kids, they can't even walk down the street to go to the convenience store.
Parents,
Yeah,
for sure.
for sure. So what activities did you enjoy growing up, Tim? Because I've got to point out, Tim was in high school an award-winning artist.
This is true.
And yet he becomes a CPA.
Well, yeah, and it's funny because I was actually a graphic design major until my senior year of college, and then the recession of '92 hit, and my accounting professor said, you can go into any industry you want if you go into accounting, and it's the only place you're going to find a job right now. So I pretty quickly changed from artist and long-haired hippie to straight-laced accoununtant and CPA. So
You said you were following in my footsteps. I thought.
yeah, long mullet and earring.
The accounting part.
Oh, okay.
So when I think back to Tim growing up, especially like during your teenage years, because I was gone in college when you guys were teenagers and in high school, come back from for the summer. And Tim was the guy in the hard rock T-shirt, long hair, just like people would be shocked. Yeah. So, actually we should show some pictures. But I'll do my best not to make sure, yeah. And then in high school, you actually won a national award for a sculpture you had.
Yeah, I did. So, yeah, I was into art quite a bit in high school. Played golf in high school, and then was into that. So I won a few awards, some for drawing, some for sculpture.
Yeah. So yeah. And was Hetherington your golf coach back then?
No.
He had moved on by then.
Yeah, it was. It was the wrestling coach, and it was so bad because he didn't have any irons in his bag. He had like 10 different woods. I mean, he had I've never seen woods like with a face like this.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't hit an iron.
Yeah.
Until you looked at your bag recently.
Yeah. That brings us to present for all of us. So, how about you, Tyler? What activities did you enjoy growing up?
We don't talk about anything growing up in Wheaton, Illinois.
Mom and Dad will not see this, by the way. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So I enjoyed sports and played baseball all the way growing up. Played basketball. Played some golf. I actually went out for the golf team. 1 year, didn't make it.
You got cut from the
I
golf
got
team?
cut.
I never heard that before.
Yeah, which inspired me to really work on my game afterwards. But yeah, I just enjoyed sports, and Wheaton was a great place to grow up. It was like Mayberry, USA.
It was. I always tell people when they ask me about Wheaton growing up, it was one of the few towns that stayed dry until like mid to late
we
90s.
Left for college.
Yeah. Then they felt like it was safe.
It was okay. Yeah.
And the most churches per capita of any town in the U.S.
Yeah. Is that right in
Yeah,
Wheaton?
it was true, yeah.
Wow. You know, I remember going to church with mom and dad growing up, and do you remember Pastor Ivan York?
Yes.
Okay, so
Jive and Ivan.
yeah, Jive and Ivan. He was obviously not a sports fan because during the winter when the Bears were on at noon, his sermons intentionally I felt like drug till 12:30, 12:45.
There was no DVR back then either.
No, it was,
only live.
and I just remember sitting in the pews, and I'd look at my watch, and it would be noon, and I know the Bears are on, and my blood pressure would just start heating up, and I'd get more and more pissed at the pastor,
See,
and
that's
then
why
had
you
to
have
ask for forgiveness.
Yeah, you have to sit up in the balcony.
Yeah.
I don't think mom and dad let you do any of that.
I do
but
that now.
We got away with a lot of
Yeah.
stuff.
We were actually okay with it because we were out with the car at McDonald's, and we knew we had a little more leeway to get back. So
Yeah, it's funny. We have, for those of the audience that don't know, we've got a sister who lives in Iowa, and she was the straight-laced, perfect one. Wasn't she the one that went to McDonald's though during church, came back and actually got in a car accident, and got outed that way? Tracy, that was classic. So, I know you guys ended up in California. You guys came out here to go to college. We all did. I went to Westmont College up in Santa Barbara. Apparently, you guys applied, didn't quite make the cut, and went to that next level school. So, where did you attend, and what did you study, Tim?
I actually started out at Trinity College in Chicago, and then transferred out to Biola University in LA, which is where Tyler was at the time.
Yeah.
So.
And Tim, when you were at Trinity, you played football there. Their first year of a football team, right?
Yeah. It was a scrimmage season, and it was the coach was Leslie Frazier.
Yeah.
And at the time, I think he was 28 years old.
Wow.
He had just blown his knee out. He blew it out in the Super Bowl, returning a punt, which he had never done before.
Was that so? 85?
Yeah.
Wow.
So he
And
went.
Leslie Frazier, for most of the audience won't know, played for the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, on the Super Bowl team. He went to the Eagles, I think, for like 2 years, and then his career was over. So it was his first coaching gig, and so he coached there for about 10 years.
Yeah.
And then got some assistant positions in the NFL, and then ended up coaching the Vikings.
Head coach of the Vikings.
Yeah.
So you kind of kicked off his career.
I did. Yeah.
Does he continue to send you Christmas cards and thank you for your
His
contributions?
nickname for me was Chicken Legs, because at the time I was all upper body and there's no work down on the legs, so that was my nickname on the team.
Ty, does that bring in mind a picture that we have of Tim?
Actually, I do think we have one.
Something about white shorts and no shirt,
Yes.
and
Tim was pretty cut.
It's a
back in the
classic.
day, though.
He was. Yeah, he was in great shape.
Not that
So-
you are now.
I know.
Yeah.
It's like it's like a funeral in here.
We'll make sure to send that cut to your kids so they knew at one
Right,
point.
thank you.
Yes. So how about you, Ty? What brought you out to California, and why do you select? And you guys, by the way, spent time together. You're 2 years apart. I'm 4 years older than Tyler, even though I introduce him as my older brother a lot of times. So we didn't really spend any time in high school, college, but you guys spent a lot of time together in high school, and then ultimately attended the same college in LA, Biola.
Yeah, I think we overlapped by 1 year
Yeah.
at Biola.
Yep.
But yeah, the weather brought me out here.
Yeah.
I couldn't take the winters and summers in Chicago. They're just brutal. So,
Yeah.
So made my way
It
out.
snows, and the snow sticks pretty much for six months.
Yeah.
And drifts up to the roof
Yeah.
line.
Yeah.
and shoveling those heavy packed snow driveways were not fun.
I think Dad still shovels, actually, at the age
He
of
does.
80.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we overlapped by a year, which funny story. When Tim came out to Biola, of course his concert T-shirt,
Yeah.
his long hair,
Of course.
and my now wife, who was my
Debbie.
girlfriend at the time, Debbie, offered to cut his hair, just trim it, and she took it all the way
off.
down. It looked
Yeah.
basically like mine right now.
Yes. Yeah. She only
Classic.
knew like one haircut.
Yeah, yeah. She had the number 2 clipper, huh?
Yeah, pretty much.
And then he never went back. So
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, it was a turning point.
Yeah. Yeah. Everything went
That
south.
explains the relationship between you and Debbie.
Right.
You know, the other story, we'll go through a bunch of rabbit trails, but I remember Debbie telling me that you guys went skiing once and didn't you break your leg or something on that trip?
No. Tyler was supposed to go, and I think you had to work or you were sick
Yeah,
or
it's
something. So I ended up joining another couple, and then I went with Debbie. And growing up in Illinois, there was Villa Olivia, I think was
Yes.
the only it was actually
Mount Trashmore.
it was actually
Yes.
a mountain of trash that
Yeah.
they sodded over. And so that was like your only experience
Yeah.
skiing. So this was the first time we went up, I think, to Big Bear, and I couldn't even get down the mountain. It was like literally every 20 yards I was and I wasn't just like slowly going down. I mean, it was like
Went
full
down.
speed
We wouldn't
and then
expect
down.
you to
Yeah.
slowly go down.
And so like the first time I went down, I felt she was just following behind me. She just had to
Yeah.
kind of trail and do a snow plow behind me because she just knew I was going to go down.
Yeah.
She would be collecting my glove, my hat, and bringing it all back to me. And then, at one point, the ski patrol came flying down. They're just like, "Man, are you okay?"
Wow.
We just.
Oh, man.
So I got through that, and then I finally got down to the bottom of the hill, and it felt like I was getting the hang of it, and then realized that nobody told me how to stop.
Yeah.
And so at the bottom, there's the line for the ski lift, and I went right over some guy's skis, and he was all decked out. You knew they were new skis, and I stopped in the parking lot, and I just unstrapped them, and I'm like, all right, this isn't for me.
Went in for some cocoa.
Oh, man. I remember the first time I skied, because just like you guys, there was no skiing when we were growing up, really. And same exact thing. All I knew is the hardest thing was getting off the chairlift and making that turn, because I didn't even know how to turn. But I would just point my skis down. I would start flying, and just like you, the only way I was going to stop is I had to fall. And after the first day, my hip was so sore. The next morning I woke up, and I had this mass on my hip. It was like the size of a baseball coming out of my hip. I'm going, oh. And I had another day of skiing, so I made sure to fall on the other side the next day.
And how many hips have you had replaced?
Yeah, 2. It all points back to that, I'm pretty sure. So you attended Biola. You guys both met your wives at Biola as well, and yeah. So now, the other thing I usually ask people is, where did you start your career? What was your job? What company? What was your first thing when you got out of college? We'll start with you, Tim.
So I had an internship my senior year at a place called Coal Management Services, and they were kind of a competitor of the Irvine Group in property management.
Yeah.
And they're right there in Newport Beach. So I worked there for the first probably 3 years after graduating, and then during that time I was studying for the CPA exam. And
I remember that well.
Yeah, that's right. I came down here a few times.
Yeah.
And the test was actually down here in San Diego. So once I passed that, then I had to quit that job, which I had started moving up and making fairly good money, and then I had to step back by probably a 50% cut to work for a CPA firm just to get the 2 years experience. And
Wow.
got through that, got certified, and then went up to Washington for about 15 years and worked at an automotive group. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gig Harbor, Washington, probably
Yep.
the most beautiful harbor town I've ever seen.
yeah.
Don't
Couple.
tell the story
Yeah, I
about
know.
the house you didn't buy up there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We got so many stories. We just don't have time. But I do remember when Tim was studying for the CPA, Carol and I had just bought our first house. Tim came down and studied, and we put him right to work because I think we had you painting the house, the inside of the house.
With a broken
broken
wrist.
arm, yes.
It was in a sling, and I was. And you had me rolling your ceiling,
Yes.
the acoustic ceiling with all the things coming down on me. Yes.
Oh,
And
man.
you were out talking to the neighbors about the next job. and
Yeah.
What else you done around here?
Which takes us back to the beginning years that we'll get back to. How about you, Tyler? What was your kind of first career path out of college?
I graduated with an accounting degree.
Yeah.
But it wasn't what I was planning on doing. I got my Series 7
Yeah.
and was planning on going into the market somewhere,
Yeah.
financial planner, or work for a bank and be some sort of financial analyst or something in the market.
Yeah.
And got into that, spent a couple years there, and then moved up to Portland to marry Debbie.
Yeah.
And just at
Was that a
time-
requirement?
Yeah. Actually, no, she had a good job, and
Yeah.
I was thinking, I think I want to get into accounting. So with that move, then I got back into accounting.
Got it.
And haven't left.
Yeah, I remember I was still down in San Diego at that point, and I remember taking a lot of business trips up to the Pacific Northwest, and I'd stay with you, and I'd stay with Tim and Cindy at their place as well, and I have great memories of the early years of my career as well, just going up there and hanging out, and
A lot of good
schooling
golf.
you in basketball 101,
Sure.
and yeah. So the other story I want to tell, because growing up, did you ever think about just owning a business, being an entrepreneur? Like, who would you ever gathered that three of us would have started a business from scratch and grown a mortgage banking company?
I always wanted to start my own business.
Really?
I think just the line of work, the accounting side of things, I think tends to, you learn a lot about businesses that you're in.
Yeah.
And I think I always had that itch.
Huh.
I didn't think I'd do it with my brothers,
Yeah.
but that's a bonus.
Yeah. Especially after university painters when we were young. It's
Oh, there's a good story
yeah.
there.
Yeah, it pretty much the same roles, right?
Torrey sold the jobs.
Yes.
We did the work. And the work that Torrey did do, we
Had to be
follow
redone.
up, because we would come back and inspect your work, and somehow paint didn't make it behind the bushes on the house. Like
Those were hot days. I've got to explain to everyone what a Chicago summer looks like. Hot, humid, you're
100
sweating.
degrees,
Getting behind
100%
those bushes to finish out that job did not appeal to me.
But we always finished the job.
Yeah, for sure.
And we had, I think we finished all three jobs that we
Yeah,
had.
that was the first time we were actually in business together. And then later, we were all you were in Portland, you were in Gig Harbor, I was still in San Diego. We pooled all our money, well, a lot of money, and started Cornerstone Home Builders.
Yep.
And we built some spec homes. Didn't lose money, but didn't make a lot of money, and eventually decided, you know what, we're just not making enough for either the capital investment or the risk.
So let's take it and put it in Hollywood video options.
Yes. No, that was before, which is another great story. Did you invest in that too?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, the
So-
three of us. Because it was part of our
Yes.
our capital in
Yeah.
Cornerstone Home Builders. We said, you know what, we've got a good idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's when I found out there's no such thing as quick money.
Yeah, for sure. We learned it the hard way. It was really interesting. So we pooled our money to become home builders, spec home builders, and I think that was a result. Maybe, did you build your first or second house?
The first one we built.
In Tigard?
Yeah.
Yep. And you did really well. And so we thought, man, we should just replicate this. So we're pulling our money together
Tyler was living in a place called Lake Oswego, Oregon, and his neighbor was an executive of Hollywood Videos. And his neighbor made the comment, we got our quarterly earnings coming up, it's going to be killer, right? Mm-hmm. And so Tyler calls me and Tim and says, we got to buy options in this company. We have to. And I shared that with a couple people at my work, and I said, this is the most certain thing. So I think we bought 30-day options maybe after earnings.
Yeah, we found out when earnings were going to be reported and bought options for maybe a week after.
Yeah.
But as close to that period as possible.
Because we thought the stock would just shoot off after the earnings report, and it did just the opposite. We lost every dollar invested.
No, I think we
couple of pennies on the dollar.
I think we invested $10,000 in options.
That was
at that time was a lot of money for us.
That's when you take in the time value of money. That's probably the equivalent today of 35, 40 grand.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it was a ton of money for us. We had young kids. Well, I did.
It was irresponsible. Was what it was.
And we lost everything. That was horrible. So.
And that wasn't insider trading, by the way.
No.
That
was after
I don't know what you guys are
right?
talking about.
And after Wall Street came out, we just thought, hey, I just always call you Bud Fox. So I think what most of the audience is really interested in, outside of how we grew up, but how did we get to this point in the business? Because this, Synergy One, people come into our company, I say this all the time, and they see who we are today, but they don't realize what we were when we started. Like, we had nothing.
Folding tables.
It was. Yeah, I remember, I think maybe Tim or myself said, Tyler, we need a conference room table and some furniture, and you go off to Costco and you pull out this plastic picnic table with chairs and a big screen TV.
Yes. Well,
which was really key.
You're presenting, right?
Such a guy thing. But I remember, we should probably go back a little bit further when Tyler and I started our first company, Security One Lending, back in 2006. Built that up. It ended up being really successful. We built a great team, #1 market shareholder in a very niche market, did well on that sale. A year before the sale, we started what we called back then a forward lending division, traditional lending, and it was simply a DBA of Security One. It was called Synergy One Lending. So when we went to sell that company to Walter Investments, publicly traded company, they owned Ditech and Greentree, so our $5 to $7 million a month of production was nothing to a company that owns Ditech. They allowed us to carve out that brand, handful of people, the technology of Encompass and OB at the time.
And then we could capitalize it and be shareholders
and
board members.
That's right.
That's it.
Yeah, that was it. Because after we sold in 2012, we separated the brands. And when you separate a brand, you have nothing. You got to incorporate. Yep. Like, you don't even have a corp, to start from. So we spent quite a bit of time kind of like, in the deal with Walters was, we'll let you do that, like you said. You can have board oversight, you can invest your personal capital, but for the next 2 years, you have an employment agreement with us, and you've got a non-compete. Yep. And we were saying, okay, so I remember the meeting. It was you, myself, Bill Trask in the conference room, and Tony Gaglione. Yep. And we had to really search deep. Do we really have it in us to take another run? And we all kind of shook hands on that deal.
I think I was all for it. You were the one that was reluctant because, of course, you're 4 years older than me, 6 years older than Tim. So you didn't know if you had enough gas in your tank.
Yeah, and my risk profile was a little bit different, too, at that point. But I remember all of us brought our hands into the middle, solid as oak, if you watched Jerry Maguire. Tony Gaglione was part of that. Yep. You, me, and Bill stuck. Tony took some vacation to
Park City.
Came back. We said we really, and we knew we had to find someone to operate because Tony was part of that transaction too, our previous company, and we said, we have to find an operator. So who do we call? We call Tim. Tim's a CPA. Worst case, he's not going to lose our money, right? That's how. And best case is he continues to build the infrastructure. And I remember bringing Tony in, asking him to be president because he resigned from our previous company first. Decided he had had enough and just wanted to go do that. And we asked him to be president. I think the pressure of that position
and the
trip
summer he spent in Park City.
Yeah, more so, yeah.
He wasn't ready to hit the gas after that trip. And so we had the opportunity to buy him out at a really, really rational price based on what we ended up selling for. So but
at the time,
it was a lot of money to us at that point. But Tim took the commitment, took the risk, came down. Tim had no mortgage experience, right? So we knew he had
a mortgage.
He had yes, yeah. He's been through the process once, so in many cases you become an expert. But I remember him relocating his family, his girls down here, took a risk on us. That's the only way we were going to be able to get through.
Someone we trust.
Yeah. Now parts of this will be cut out of the interview, Tim, so don't get a big head. But had you not made that commitment to us, we would not have been able to make the turn. So we also felt that because Tim didn't have mortgage experience, we need to find a leader who could actually start building. And we went through this series of CEOs, starting with
presidents.
Was Sean Marsh the first one?
He was no, it was
Brad Neese.
Yeah,
Brad Neese was first?
Yeah.
Okay, so we got great stories around this too. So Brad Neese, we bring him in as our CEO. We think, okay, we need to raise more capital we raise friends and family capital. And then we felt like the capital requirements of the business were going to go up, not down over time. And we were right about that. So we asked Brad to put together a deck. We went up to meet with Jam Equity, an investor in our previous deal. So we know these guys really well, and we think we got this in the bag. Brad gets to that meeting, doesn't talk about one single business development thing outside of the culture of the company. Like, we're going to be fun, we're going to, and
great place to work. Not that that's not important.
Yes.
But
pull-ups and push-ups.
Not to a private equity firm.
Yeah, and a well-known private equity firm. And after that meeting, I just knew we didn't have the right guy because, and the other things, Tim, you experienced this when you guys first started. He would be like, we have no revenue coming in. We've got no recruiting activity. That's his job, build revenue. And yet with our small staff, he's doing push-ups and pull-up sessions, right?
Yes.
Contests like that. So it made it a lot of fun for the employees, but they didn't work all day. Well, there was a limited amount of work and just didn't grow.
He made good on his culture promise.
He did, yeah. It was the kickoff of what is today maybe our culture, right? So then we let Brad go. We bring in a gentleman named Sean Marsh, who we had met probably, 5 years prior.
In the reverse.
In the reverse space.
He had helped build a company that was sold to Quicken.
That's right.
Reverse.
That's right.
But that's about our experience with them prior to that.
Very articulate guy, but up and down emotionally. And, there's so many great Marsh stories, including when you had to let him go at his own golf club. But when we started, I really thought he was going to be the guy to kind of turn it. We allowed him to invest into the company at founder's price. And he just could not recruit. He was building costs. We had operations people coming on with some of these folks had never bootstrapped really a company from the ground up, and it's different. You got to grind it out. You got to find revenue first. You scramble on the cost side, and then over time you can start to build that infrastructure. But I'll never forget this. We put this big event together here in San Diego.
1,000 realtors.
1,000
in one
realtors
room.
show up, yeah, and which is exactly the audience we want. We're launching a TV show, The American Dream, with Craig Sewing. Craig did a great job presenting at that event. Everyone was impressed, and then there came this moment where Craig, Sean introduces Craig. Craig comes up to this round of applause, and he's got the slideshow, and he can't find the clicker. And so he calls Sean Marsh out in the crowd, said, "Sean, you need to get back up here and get this thing working," And it was just hilarious in that setting. Yeah. And little did we know at the time, we got through it. Sean scrambled up on stage. I think he was a little bit embarrassed. And about a week later, we found out Craig actually had the clicker in his pocket. He just didn't look for it. So, and then after that event, you put on this big event, you engage people. They're excited about the product. But the most important part is the next 2 weeks, the follow-through. How do we engage? How do we build the relationship? And I remember Sean being so stressed building up to the event that he asked to take the next 10 days off of our company. Yes. And it was like money.
Rejuvenation.
Rejuvenation, yeah. So just crazy how that all worked out. He ended up staying as a shareholder. We thought about buying him out, but at the time we should have. But it's just interesting. And so we had to make that change probably pretty close to right before we were able to leave our company and actually come to Synergy One and start building with Tim. But I remember you and Tony met with him at his golf club down in, I want to say it was down in Chula Vista maybe. And you were just simply, I think, asking him to make a pay cut. He was unwilling, and you just started in his club with members around, started cussing him that he had.
I did not cuss.
Okay, yeah. Tony said differently, but okay. But
I was just so frustrated
Yeah.
that a leader wouldn't participate in a pay cut.
Yeah.
With the rest of us.
Especially when he's in charge of building the enterprise and the revenue stream, and he hadn't done that.
Yeah.
So there's a ton of stories behind that, but and then we came in, and it's been a fun, quick run. I mean, since 2015 when I came, I think fourth quarter of 2014. Yeah. You came 2015.
Halfway through 2015, we brought on the reverse business.
That's right.
Which didn't go
as
well
planned
as what we thought for the first 6 months, but we turned it.
We did. I remember when we were going through that period where the reverse was really draining resources, not adding to it. All of us as executives took a 40% pay cut just so we could make it through. We had also raised capital. We went back to Jam Equity, that company that Brad Neese had met with. They had invested in us previously, gave them a great return, showed them exactly what we were looking to build. They invested. SG Capital, Kevin Gasvoda, and Dan Sparks, two former executives at Goldman Sachs that we had gotten to know in 07 and 08. Great partners, great capital partners. It's interesting when you raise capital from institutions, you're not quite sure what you're going to get always. But when I look at those two firms, especially when Mike Seckitz was in play, and then you had Kevin Gasvoda that was real active.
We were so fortunate.
We were so lucky. And then we turned the reverse around. It actually contributed in a big way to our ability to exit with Mutual of Omaha in July.
It really set the stage for us to grow the forward business.
It did.
Yeah. With those revenues.
That's right. So it's been a crazy ride. Yes. And when you think about how it's all come together at the end, it's easy now to look back and say, great job, guys, right?
Yeah.
And to the entire team, we built a great team that actually executes for us every day. And we've got the right people in position. But there were times of struggle. Yeah. So looking back, and I'll start with you, Tim, looking back during that time from when we started in 2013 and brought. When did you move down? 2014 or was it 13?
2013.
Okay.
Yeah, July.
What would you say was the most difficult time for you personally in that business? Like looking in hindsight.
Yeah. So when I came, Sean Marsh was the president at the time, and so I came in July, and all of that kind of transpired in about a 6-month period. I think it was at the end of that year.
Sounds right.
That he decided that it wasn't for him. He ended up leaving. And I just remember coming back that first week of January, and we again had another conversation about is this really what we want to do?
Yeah.
You know, it's probably time either to cut bait or just go all in. And at that time, you guys still weren't over. Yeah. And like, Tyler was joking. I remember having a conversation with you where you're just like, man, I don't know if I have another run in me. And I'm like, you're 50 years old. And now I'm turning 50 this year. And I'm like, yeah, I don't have another run in me. But once Sean left, I just remember coming in. We had, I think, 11 employees at the time.
Yeah.
And like Irene and Joel were there at the time.
And Patty, I think, right? Was she there at that point?
I don't think she was there.
Okay.
Yeah, she came pretty soon afterwards. But I remember having to go through layoffs at that time, and we were going from like 11 to like 7 people. But it was but it was tough because you were such a tight knit group. You're like battling through everything together, and to have to do that at that time. I just remember having to have one-off conversations with each person to just assure them that we're gonna get through this. You guys are the core, and we're gonna But it was a lot of convincing people to still believe in us at that time. So I just remember that being really difficult. And then a year later you were on board, and we had raised the money with Jam, so that felt better. But there's been so many cycles where we've had to kind of bootstrap, take pay cuts and kind of hit the reset button to get back to profitability. So so that was probably the one moment that having to go through layoffs within the first 6 months of being there, and me having to do it, and with that small of a group. So
and you've been doing it ever since.
Yes. Nobody likes me at year end around here.
You mentioned a couple names of people that have been with us a long time. Irene Scott. I remember, I want to say it was in April 2015. We actually made really good money that month. We funded $40 million. I think we had 6 or 7 operational people. So you had Irene Scott, you had Patty doing docks, funding, and shipping of $40 million. And that's impressive when you look back compared to, when you go through the operational metrics today and what it takes to put this company together. I think in many ways we were the most efficient ever back in those early days, because everyone pitches in, they just do whatever it takes to make it happen.
I was doing accounts payable, I was doing payroll, I was doing the accounting and HR. It was a lot, but you didn't really think about it at the time. It was just things that needed to get done. So,
and that's where a lot of the memories are actually created, is in the struggle.
There.
Before we got there. And how about you, Tyler? Since you've been on board with Synergy, what's kind of been the time that's been most challenging? And the reason I ask this question is, I think building a business and being an entrepreneur and succeeding with a company, it's nothing more than being persistent. Everyone gets knocked down. It's how many times are you willing to get back up and fight? And so I'm always interested in what were the obstacles, what was the hardest time that you kind of had to pick yourself up from?
Speaking of Jerry Maguire, I thought you're doing a good job of doing your best Roy Firestone. And trying to bring tears.
You're not going to make me cry.
I know that's not going to happen.
So I would probably go back to the time we took pay cuts. At the time, we were running out of cash. We had we had a pretty decent business. We were generating revenue, but our expenses were out of line.
Yeah.
And getting towards the end of the year, I think it was 2015, and we had brought on the reverse.
Was this right after you joined? Yeah, I'm
No,
joking.
prior. Officially prior. But I just remember that we were running very low on cash.
Yeah.
And Jam Equity had a second piece to their contribution, their capital investment, and we had taken the second round, half of the second round in earlier that year in order to get the reverse off the ground.
Yeah.
And that was in June. By the time we got to December, we were running low again.
Yeah.
And we all got together as a group and decided to take pay cuts, and that's when we were able to raise capital from SG.
Yeah.
And without SG, we might not be here.
Yeah. That's exactly right. I remember closing on that, getting the commitment from Kevin Gasvoda. That was December
31.
Yeah, the very end of the year when we needed it the most for the financial audit. Jam had already invested quite a bit of cash. They didn't see us really committed to making the turn, but we did make the turn. And we wouldn't have made the turn had Kevin Gasvoda and Dan Sparks specifically invested and believed in what we were building.
Yeah. And Jam was a great partner too.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
They were already all in.
Yep.
So SG was important.
Yeah, totally agree. And they ended up being just great business partners, great operating partners. Kevin Gasvoda and Dan Sparks, two senior guys from Goldman that actually take an interest in the small little boutique company across the world in San Diego from New York. And it always comes back to like building relationships, building trust with people along the way. I think that's why Kevin invested in us. He tried to invest in Security One, and we went another direction, but we handled that well, I think.
Yeah. And I think just how the team came together then. It was pretty impressive. Yeah. And we turned it quick, and Alex Pistone came up with a great game plan.
He did.
He executed, and we turned that business into a highly profitable business.
For sure.
And now, fourth in the country?
Yeah.
Fourth or fifth, in terms of market share.
Market share. And then put us in position for the Mutual of Omaha transaction in July, which really started a year prior when we took, it probably goes back 2 years now, when we took a meeting with Jen Fuller, I think is her last name. She worked for KBW, came out. She was introduced to us by Kevin Gasvoda, said, I want to learn a little bit about reverse. Do you mind if I fly out? I think she was based in Atlanta. And we took that first meeting for about 2 hours, gave her an education, didn't hear from her again. 9 months later, we get a call. She goes, our firm covers a company called Mutual of Omaha. Have you heard of them? Yeah. Yeah, I've heard of it. And she asked us to take a meeting. Jeff Schmidt and Terry Keneally flew out, went through the educational process on the reverse. They were interested in that sector because it was complementary. And that meeting went really well. Then they asked us to come out to Omaha, present to some of the board and the executive team at Omaha. Did that. That was, it was interesting because I don't think we overthought it. We just went in. We didn't even know there was really much on the line at that point. It was early. They wanted to acquire us. Went through 9 months of due diligence to where we couldn't share with our internal employees who they were and what we were doing in the conference room, because when they outsourced the diligence to A&M, they came in like 20 strong, 20 suits, and we were expecting a handful of people to show up to crack files, and they stayed for a long time. And I remember there was, some of the employees at that point on the operational side said, should we start looking for jobs? Are you guys being put out of business by the regulators? And we couldn't really say much. And so finally we decided to say, let's at least let them know it's a capital raise. And ease their fares. So,
And
but
initially, they were only interested in reverse,
they were.
but after meeting the management team and
Yeah.
everyone here at Synergy, they decided, because they had a JV currently going with Prime, and they felt like this was the team they wanted to bet on.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is awesome.
Yeah, and they've been great partners, and we got a lot to do. Obviously, going forward, we have a huge responsibility to Mutual of Omaha Bank, who bet on us. So I think the executive team and is really committed to doing the right things to make sure the returns back to them are good. And number two is not embarrass the brand that they've built over the last 108 years. So it's been quite a run.
It has.
So it's been fun too, because one of the other things we all had to think about, it can be dangerous going into business with family. I've seen families split apart because of business conflict, and you know, much to my surprise, no, I'm joking. We've actually gotten through a lot of the business conflict. It hasn't had an impact on us personally.
Yeah.
So that's probably one of the things I'm most proud of, is being able to build with my brothers and from scratch when it's really hard, and just grinding it out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Helps being on different floors, for sure.
I noticed the two of you are on the same floor.
Yes.
So I think that might
Well,
have
we
been.
always shared bunk beds, so.
when I couldn't get my point across enough
Yeah.
to the growth factor in the business versus the risk protection factor,
Yeah.
I figured I'd need to bring in another accountant.
Yeah. What's that I always say? You cannot cut yourself to greatness.
That is true. That is true.
But it's been a fun ride. It's been fun to build this. I'm really proud of the company we've built together, because really it's building teams of people.
Yeah.
And the people that are in our company right now are the right people at the right time. I'm really thankful.
We're blessed.
We are. We had people take a chance on us all the way through, and it's been a lot of fun. So the last part of this that I usually do is called the hot seat. So although it's not hot, it's just a series of maybe 3 or 4 questions where people can get to know you even more personally based on your answers. So the first thing I always ask is your favorite movie of all time. So we'll start with you, Tim.
Well, yeah, it's kind of a tie, but
Shallow Grave. There's a great story there too.
Godfather 1 and 2, it's kind of one movie together,
Yeah.
but they're both great movies. Between, I'd say those, and then Pulp Fiction is a very close second.
I remember watching that in Portland. Tim might have been at the house with you and Debbie. Did you watch it in Portland or
No?
No. Okay, I was up there when I saw it for the first time. So that's interesting. Says a lot about you, Tim.
And Terry Connealy, by the way.
That's right.
I think Terry had
So
Yeah.
be careful.
Yes. Great movie.
Yes.
How about you, Ty?
I would say It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh, yeah. You and Jeff Schmidt.
Oh, that's
That
what
was
he-
Jeff's favorite too.
Right.
Yeah, and that's my favorite of all time.
Yeah.
It's so funny because, you know, when we gather up for Christmas, Debbie would always have these black and white movies playing. I'm going, what? Like, why are we watching this? And then I remember sitting down for the first time. This is probably 8 years ago. Watching It's a Wonderful Life, and it was probably right around the credit crisis, and where everything was really close. And I just remember thinking that is just a phenomenal story. And
I can't believe that it took you that long to see. I mean,
I know.
Tyler and I
Yeah.
grew up watching it like when we were like really young, like
Really?
you know, preteen, like because it was always on TV
Yeah.
around
Yeah.
that time. So like you almost got sick of it, but you watched it every
Yeah, we
year.
watched it
Yeah.
every year.
And now the new tradition is to go down to Coronado in the little
Yeah.
theater down there and watch it on Christmas Eve and,
yeah,
and on the big screen.
and
So
then
it's fun.
just run down the
The center medium.
Orange Avenue, being happy, just like Jimmy Stewart.
So
yeah.
that I would say, so that's obviously, you know, my favorite movie, but there's so many different genres that I would say the other one that I really like is Jerry Maguire.
Yeah, I do too. I can relate to Jerry Maguire.
Yeah.
I remember
that was about credit crisis time too.
that was.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was.
We
that was
watched
interesting.
together, I think, up in Portland.
Yeah, I remember. Yes, and I remember that was about the time I was getting ready to leave my first mortgage company that I had been with for like 8 years, and venturing off on my own. Actually teaming up with Ed DeWitt and Trio.
Yeah.
And I just remember, I hope these guys are with me after watching that movie, or am I just taking the goldfish? So
that has
that is
everything,
good.
though. That has,
Yeah.
sports element and
Yeah.
and everything. So.
And that was Tom Cruise before he became really weird. So
Yes.
Yeah.
it's okay.
I think he's always been really weird. But
Yeah.
he's a great actor.
How about favorite book you've ever read?
I don't read a whole lot of books, unfortunately. I mean to. The stack of books next to my bed is high, but I would say.
So the one you've read.
Yeah, yeah. So my favorite and the one, I would say the best one I've read recently is The Lone Survivor.
Oh yeah. Yep. I remember you telling me about that.
Yeah. It's incredible. I read it before I saw the movie. The movie was good too,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
Kind of
the
gives
book
you a
is-
perspective.
it does. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of sacrifice and struggle,
Yeah.
all the things you deal with in business, but those are just emotional struggles, not physical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. How about you, Tim?
I would say I went through a series of books by Joe Nesbo, Norwegian author, and they're kind of like murder mystery kind of books. And I enjoyed that whole series. That was really good.
Huh. How long ago did you read those? I don't remember that author, and I don't remember those books.
Yeah, he just came out with a movie that bombed, his first movie called The Snowman. It came out like a year or two ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, he's not like a really well-known one, but kind of in the line of the girl with the dragon tattoo, like that other author.
Yeah.
They're kind of similar in writing styles.
Got it. Last question I've got is, if you could go back in time and give advice to your younger self, what would that be? Let's start with you, Tim.
Mix in a salad. I would say at an earlier age, especially like as you're first starting out in professionally, is to earlier just be yourself.
Yeah.
I think everybody, when they're in that early career stage, you try and be what people want you to be and present differently than what you are.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably it.
Yeah. That's good. How about you, Ty?
I'd say probably surround yourself with the right people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
It's too late for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some you don't have a choice.
Some you just family. I always talk about the company being a high performance team because some companies describe themselves as a family, and family you can't lose. You're stuck with them forever, which is
unfortunate.
yes, a two-edged sword. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for taking the time, you guys, in coming in and sharing with the team from Synergy One, Mutual of Omaha Mortgage, and RFS. I think it's always good to go back to the beginning and, who are we as operators, as people first, and then, it's always fun retelling the stories of the early stages of the company because that, quite honestly, that's where most of the memories are built, and we're still a very young company. We've got a long ramp ahead, and we're so well positioned. So. It should be a really good run.
Thanks for finally asking us.
Yeah, I've been asking you guys for a year, so nice try.
We're here. We're right upstairs, Torrey.
Yes,
Anytime,
I know
once we
that.
like the
You guys obviously selected bring me down to the first floor, and you guys popped up to the 11th. So, thanks for that. Well, that ends this edition of Synergy Connects. I hope you enjoyed this, and we look forward to meeting with other leaders down the road. Thank you. All right, boys. See, that was easy. How long was that one?